At the banquet, the 5-year-old son covered his nose and said, "Auntie, why do you smell so bad?" The white moonlight, provoked into a frenzy, sent the son to a garbage dump in the suburbs infested with snakes and insects, claiming to let him taste what real stench was like. However, the husband used the only car at the scene to take the white moonlight for a drive to relax, completely disregarding that the son, terrified, had an asthma attack and was on the brink of death. He rolled down the car window, his gaze toward me filled with disdain. "You're just relying on the fact that I proposed to you 100 times back then, which is why you're so arrogant and have taught the child to be like this. If there's a next time, I won't mind giving you more lessons." While my hands trembled as I dialed 911, I silently wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes. He didn't know that I had already contacted my mafia father abroad. Only a few days remained until he came to take me home. Returning home from the hospital was already a week later. The villa was in complete disarray. Clothes, shoes, cosmetics, scattered everywhere. It was obvious that during the time the child and I were absent, Ethan and Vivian had enjoyed themselves immensely. Holding my weakened son, I prepared to go upstairs to pack luggage. From the corner children's room came a woman's pleasurable scream. "Ethan, doing this in Tommy's room, won't sister-in-law be angry if she finds out?" Ethan's voice, accompanied by heavy panting, responded, "No, last time I already taught her a lesson, she must have learned to behave. Even for Tommy's sake, she wouldn't dare get angry." Yes, I didn't dare get angry. Last time, I merely refused to make a midnight snack for Vivian. Ethan had our 5-year-old son hung upside down on the rooftop. Only when it was done would he be let down. Tightening my hold on my son, I turned decisively. But the door behind me opened. Ethan, holding the delicate and soft Vivian, walked out and paused upon seeing me. "You're back? Perfect, Vivian and I are tired too, go make her a bowl of chicken soup. Send it up when it's cooled." Placing my son on the sofa to sit properly, I looked at Vivian. "Any other requests?" Seeing me so obedient, Ethan unusually gave me an approving look. "Celia, with you being so well behaved, I'm relieved. Tomorrow is our son's birthday, I'll throw him a party." As soon as the man finished speaking, Vivian's tears suddenly fell, clutching her chest and crying out in pain. Upon seeing this, Ethan immediately panicked, pulling our son to the ground to let Vivian sit on the sofa. The man gently asked Vivian where it hurt while sternly shouting for the butler to prepare the car, ready to rush to the hospital. Holding my son, seeing the man's anxious appearance, I couldn't help but want to laugh. Because at the banquet a week ago, the son merely said, "Auntie Vivian, why do you smell so bad?" and was sent by the man to the snake and insect-infested garbage dump in the suburbs. Even when the son had an asthma attack, lying in the garbage heap barely breathing, Ethan remained expressionless, coldly ordering the bodyguards to continue dumping garbage on the son, under the pretext of learning manners. I rushed forward to stop it but was firmly blocked. I knelt on the ground begging for mercy, and Ethan instructed the butler, "Remember to notify the hospitals, none in this area are to send ambulances. Let Celia carry the child and walk there herself. Only after suffering hardship will one know what words cannot be said." Holding my son tightly, I turned to leave, but Ethan coldly grabbed my wrist. "Come with us." "What?" Before I could ask further, Ethan had already dragged us mother and son into another car. "Vivian is upset because she saw you and the child, you must take responsibility and go to the hospital with us." My wrist was yanked hard, dislocating with a crack. Ethan sheepishly let go. How useless, even pulling a hand causes dislocation. Since Vivian appeared, useless had almost become my synonym. Being pushed down by Vivian, falling and bleeding from the head, was my uselessness. When the son had a fever and all doctors were called away by Vivian, it was my uselessness. Ethan taking Vivian to various banquets, and me being called a mistress, was also my uselessness. The bloody taste spread in my mouth as I resignedly got into the car. Just endure 3 more days. As long as I wait 3 more days, my mafia father abroad will come to take us home. Then I can take the child and leave Ethan forever. On the way, the son was very scared, tightly huddled in my arms. Mom, is Dad going to hurt us again for that woman? Enduring the pain, I whispered comfort, "It's okay, Mom is here, Mom will protect Tommy." As the words fell, the driving chauffeur couldn't hold back a scoff. I knew what he was laughing at. Last time, during the cruise vacation, just because Vivian was unhappy, Ethan threw the son into the sea. That day, to save Tommy, I swam in the sea for 3 hours, suffering severe hypothermia and nearly requiring amputation. But that was in the past. During the son's hospitalization, because he inherited my Rh-negative blood, I transfused blood to him despite my illness. Unexpectedly, through blood bank comparison, I found my long-lost mafia father. I was no longer alone. The car stopped soon. 3 bodyguards forcefully surrounded me and my son, taking us to the operating room door. "Vivian has been diagnosed with acute leukemia, both you and your son's bone marrow match. Draw mine." I answered immediately, fearing Ethan would harm Tommy. The man was stunned, his face showing rare distress. The doctor said anesthesia would affect bone marrow quality, so. "It's okay, draw mine," I said firmly, hiding my son behind me. Ethan smiled gently, signaling the bodyguards to take me away. "In that case, draw the blood from the son." As the words fell, I suddenly broke free from the bodyguard's control. "No. The son is only 5, just discharged, he can't endure it." "Ethan, isn't taking bone marrow enough? That's our son." My body trembled in disbelief. Ethan frowned, looking as if I was being unreasonable. "Tommy is my child, how could I bear to harm him? It's rare for me to feel sorry for you, fearing you'd donate both bone marrow and blood. Besides, this is a lesson for the son. If he hadn't been taught badly by you, angering Vivian in public, she wouldn't have developed leukemia from anger. This is the sin you must atone for." He ignored the son's terrified gaze, ordering the bodyguards to forcibly carry him to the blood-drawing room. Mom, save me, Mom." The son struggled, reaching out to me, crying for Mom. I went mad, struggling desperately, but was harshly pulled away by the bodyguards the moment I touched his fingers. Seeing my reddened eyes, Ethan's heart skipped a beat, assuring, "Celia, rest assured, I'll watch the doctors the whole time. At most 200 cubic centimeters, nothing will happen." I said nothing, just let my tears dry completely. "Ethan, I trust you one last time." The surgery proceeded quickly. And indeed, as Ethan said, no anesthesia was used throughout. A needle as thick as a child's arm was brutally inserted into my body. I bit my lips raw, repeatedly fainting from pain and waking again. The sweat soaked the entire operating table. In a daze, I heard the nurses chatting. "Do we really have to draw that child's blood? That Ms. Vivian isn't sick at all." "So what? The dean took the money, we have to do it. Besides, didn't you see how much Ethan cares? It's obvious she's the apple of his eye, who are we to oppose a wealthy family? It's just pitiful for that child, only 5, and they want to draw 800 cubic centimeters, half his life is gone." The young nurse, unable to bear it, asked in surprise, "Wasn't it 200 cubic centimeters?" "Originally 200, but Ms. Vivian just cried a bit saying she was uncomfortable, and Ethan ordered to continue drawing, saying better safe than sorry." Sigh, the child's face turned purple, still calling for Mom. Tears flowed uncontrollably, I felt my sanity breaking. "Ethan, you lied to me again." Upon waking, the first thing I did was get out of bed to find Tommy. Ethan sat on the sofa reviewing documents, seeing me awake, his eyes lit up. "You're awake? Is your body still uncomfortable? Want something to eat?" "Where's Tommy?" I asked him, eyes red. Ethan's smile stiffened, the excitement on his face slowly fading. "Tommy he lost too much blood, hasn't woken yet. But the doctor said he's fine now, as long as he rests well, he'll definitely recover. I also booked all the drone squads in the city, when he wakes, they'll perform for him. Tommy will surely be happy." Ethan was always like this. After giving me and the child a big stick, he'd offer a sweet date, thinking that could cover up the harm he caused us. A flash of sarcasm passed in my eyes. I didn't want to anger him, so I only asked for my phone. Perhaps my performance was too calm. Ethan was clearly stunned, pausing for a long time before handing me the phone. Glancing at the large countdown clock on the screen, Ethan suddenly asked, "What countdown?" Since Vivian returned, this was the first time he cared about my life. The irritation in my heart grew. I only perfunctorily said, "Not important." Ethan was stunned, inexplicably feeling stuffy in his chest. But he couldn't lower his face to ask again, crossing his arms and giving me a cold glance. Throwing down, putting on an act, before striding away. In the past, his attitude would have stimulated my eyes to redden. But now, I just silently watched the countdown on the screen, thinking about what luggage hadn't been packed yet. After all, less than 2 days remained until my father came to pick me up. That night, I successfully transferred to my son's ward. He was still in a coma. His eyes were swollen like walnuts, his arms covered in dense needle marks. The nurse said it was because the son's veins were thin, hard to insert the needle, so they tried dozens of times. I masochistically asked for details over and over, wishing I could take his place. Ethan probably knew he went too far this time, having the butler send many gifts. Toys of all sizes filled the ward, yet none were suitable for a child his age. Meanwhile, Vivian's Facebook updated every 10 minutes. Didn't want to eat, Mr. Ethan had to feed me personally. Injection hurts so much, Mr. Ethan blew on it for a long time. Wanted to see the sunrise, Mr. Ethan, fearing I'd catch cold, found a small blanket to warm my feet. The blanket used to warm Vivian's feet was my son's bebe. Every night, Tommy needed to hold it to sleep. Now it became Ethan's tool to please Vivian. I felt nauseous and ran to the bathroom. Upon returning, I received my father's message, boarded the plane, arriving tomorrow. The next day, I held my son and discharged home. Less than half an hour remained until my father's plane landed. In the villa, the music was deafening. Vivian and her friends were holding a celebration party. "Vivian, you're so smart, faking illness once made Celia and that child donate both bone marrow and blood for you. Now, the entire wealthy circle knows you're the one on Ethan's heart. When you successfully rise and prosper, don't forget us." Facing her sister's flattery, Vivian was very pleased. "Of course, donating bone marrow is nothing. If I want, even selling the mother and son, Ethan wouldn't bear to get angry with me. Don't believe? I'll demonstrate for you." She spotted me and my son. Confidently stepping forward, she raised her hand and slapped hard. Caught off guard, my cheek swelled high. Tommy was terrified, reaching out to block. "No, bad woman, don't hit Mom." Bang! Before the son finished, he was kicked to the ground by Vivian. "Little bastard, who gave you the right to speak?" The son grunted, blood flowing from his mouth. I went mad, pushing Vivian away. "Don't touch my son." Vivian was stunned at first, then furious. "What are you waiting for? Quickly hold her down." I couldn't struggle, pinned firmly to the ground. Tommy was also twisted by the arms, tied to the sofa, crying for Dad and Mom. Vivian wasn't satisfied, raising her hand to my face, 1 slap, 2 slaps, 3 slaps. By the 17th, my mouth was completely split. Someone was scared. "Vivian, enough? If Ethan comes back and sees his wife and child like this, how do we explain?" Yes, for years ago, that little daughter just cursed Celia as poor behind her back, and Ethan bankrupted their family. They're still selling at the night market. And last year, Grace drunkenly bumped Celia once, and the next day the Lynn family was forced to emigrate. Now like this, if Ethan finds out, what to fear? Vivian interrupted her, eyes flashing with jealous malice. "You said that was before, now Ethan's heart has only me. If you don't dare, step aside, don't spoil my fun." Slap slap slap. Vivian got more excited with each slap. Tommy's voice gradually cried hoarse. I couldn't speak anymore, each breath felt the blood in my mouth. The 99th slap fell, and the villa door banged open. Ethan's voice, mixed with shock, panic, and anger, rang out, "Vivian? What are you doing?" Waking again was still in the hospital. In just a few days, Tommy and I had entered here countless times. Ethan sat beside, a flash of distress in his eyes upon seeing me awake. I thought he would persuade me to forgive Vivian, saying it was just a joke. Or simply say it was my fault, making me take Tommy to apologize to Vivian. After all, it wasn't the first time he inverted right and wrong. But unexpectedly, he told me, Vivian went too far this time. I stopped her card, those who helped her, I punished all, and they won't appear before you and Tommy again. And this key, you and Tommy moved to the suburban villa first. Okay. I understood. He wanted me to take Tommy away, making way for Vivian. I agreed readily, but Ethan was unhappy. You don't ask why? Or, don't you try to retain? I shook my head. Not interested. I only knew that in one more hour, my father's car would arrive downstairs. By then, neither Ethan nor Vivian would have a chance to harm me and the child again. Stung by my calm, Ethan's face suddenly darkened. He stood up, coldly announcing, "The doctor said Vivian was stimulated, condition serious. Last blood draw wasn't enough, this time double." As the words fell, before I reacted, the bodyguards had grabbed Tommy. No, no. Tommy already had blood drawn, and Vivian isn't sick at all, she's lying to you. I panicked, falling off the bed, trying to protect Tommy. But Ethan yanked my hand away, looking down arrogantly. "I guessed you'd slander Vivian, so I specially got the medical records from the doctor." "Want to save Tommy? Kneel and kowtow to me, say you're wrong, shouldn't spout nonsense due to jealousy. As long as you kowtow 100 times, like I proposed to you back then, I'll release Tommy." "No, Mom, no." The son cried and shouted, anxious, asthma attacking again, face turning more cyanotic. As if blind, Ethan signaled the bodyguards to lift the son high, like a dying fish. I had no choice, enduring the humiliation to kneel. "After kowtowing, you let us go." Ethan bit his lip raw. "You want to leave me that much?" I didn't answer, just like a numb machine, kneeling, kowtowing. 1, 2. Blood soon spread on the tiles, but I seemed to feel no pain. The kowtowing sped up, tears on my face gradually drying. The hospital tiles were cold and hard, like Ethan's heart, somehow feeling severely blocked. "Do you admit wrong?" I was silent. 37th. "As long as you admit, I'll release Tommy immediately, find the best doctors for you mother and son." 48th. "I can also place Vivian elsewhere, never let her disturb your lives again." 74th. Ethan couldn't endure any more. He banged and kicked over the bedside table, gnashing teeth. "Celia. You're fine. Someone, call the doctor to draw blood." Hearing this, I finally reacted, almost madly screaming, "Ethan, you promised, as long as I kowtow, you'd release Tommy. You can't lie to me." Seeing my crimson eyes, for a moment, Ethan almost forgot to breathe. He was about to sarcasm me more when the ward door was suddenly banged open. A group of burly foreign mercenaries rushed in, revealing a man with white temples behind. "Daughter, I'm late." Perhaps due to appearance and the unyielding spirit in my bones, my father recognized me almost at a glance. He squeezed through the crowd into the door, helping me up from the ground. Ethan stood in the ward, watching the scene, a mocking smile on his lips. "Who is this old man?" Ethan knew my family, knew I had no backing, so he dared to bully me in every way. His gaze swept over me, tone frivolous and full of disdain. "Hiring such a group to act with you, really willing to spend big money." I clenched my teeth, wanting to explain but unable to make a sound. Father turned to Ethan, eyes with complex emotions. "Young man, you're quite capable, daring to harm my daughter and grandson like this." His voice was low, each word full of threat. Ethan was stunned, then laughed loudly. "Grandson? Daughter? Don't joke, do you think I'm a 3-year-old? He crossed his arms, face full of contempt. "Celia, how much did you pay him to act this farce with you?" "Old madman, you really can pretend." Father's face darkened terribly. "Mr. Ethan, seems you don't know who I am," he said, tone calm yet with suffocating pressure. "I am the true controller of Italy's largest mafia currently. Now, I warn you, if you dare touch her finger again, I'll make you regret coming to this world." Ethan first froze, then found it even funnier. What a mafia controller. He approached step by step, looking down condescendingly. "Celia, stop pretending, admit wrong now, and I can consider forgiving you." As soon as the words fell, he suddenly reached out, roughly snatching the child from my arms. Startled, I immediately reached back to grab. Who knew Ethan would hold the child tightly, then turned to the balcony edge, gesturing to throw the child down. "Look, this is your precious grandson." He provocatively looked at father, tone increasingly arrogant. I flailed to rush forward to save, but was firmly protected by mercenaries, unable to move. Seeing Ethan lift the child over the void, my heart felt pierced by a sharp knife. "Let him go. Please, let him go." Tears blurred my vision, but Ethan was unmoved, instead raising his brow more smugly. Father's gaze suddenly turned cold. He gestured, several mercenaries moved quickly, preparing to rush up to save. However, Ethan seemed to have anticipated this, sneering as he pushed the child down a bit. "Dare move a step. Aren't you mafia? Come save if capable. I want to see if your mouths are tough or this child's life." The air seemed frozen, the ward filled only with the child's cries and Ethan's grim laugh. My heart almost stopped, mind blank. This is my son, the flesh I bore with all my might. If something happens to him, I'd rather die here immediately. Want to try if you're faster or my bullet? When all thought the situation irretrievable, father drew a gun from his bosom, aiming at Ethan's head. The cold muzzle instantly silenced the room. Ethan's face finally changed, his confident smile stiffened on his lips, replaced by undisguised terror. "Celia, you're serious?" His voice trembled, obviously first realizing he might have provoked the wrong person. "Put down the child, or next second you'll never see tomorrow's sun." Father's voice was ice-cold, merciless, with no room for retreat. His finger on the trigger, ready for the fatal pull anytime. Ethan's hands began trembling slightly, forehead breaking into cold sweat. The truth before him, Ethan had to believe, but still hard to accept that I, whom he saw as an ant to crush at will, suddenly one day stood above him. His face became very ugly, facing me, countless past scenes surged into his mind. I was an orphan from childhood, grew up in an orphanage, always, eating well, dressing warm, living properly was my greatest wish. In university, I did 3 part-time jobs daily to barely fill my stomach and gather tuition. Meeting Ethan was almost a salvation for me. No longer receiving cold stares due to poverty, I once thought my happy life was coming. Who knew it was empty? Until recently, I accidentally learned I wasn't an orphan. I once had family and parents. But shortly after birth, I was secretly taken by father's enemies and left adrift, leading to later events. Ethan still hard to accept. I only cared about Tommy's safety, not wanting to analyze what he was struggling with. Ethan murmured, "How possible, is it a mistake?" When I first met Celia, she was delivering takeout at school gate, couldn't afford a 50 yuan short sleeve, how could she be mafia heiress? Father glanced disdainfully, as if mocking his blindness. Then drew a paternity test from bosom, showing our kinship index as high as 99.99%. Ethan finally despairingly accepted the fact, hugging Tommy back from the balcony. The moment mercenaries handed the child to me, my tears burst forth, as if all pain and grievances found outlet in this instant. Father stepped forward quickly, carefully holding the child, eyes full of pity and distress. "Celia, don't cry." Father softly comforted me, but his voice carried irrepressible anger. "How are your injuries? The child's condition?" He lowered head to check the child, but found undried blood on Tommy's little face, making him more furious. "Who did this? Who dares harm you and my grandson like this?" he asked, gnashing teeth, fists clenched tight. At this moment, the ward door was suddenly pushed open, a coquettish figure intruded. Vivian in an exquisite dress, high heels clacking on the floor. Not at all the weakness and pallor of a leukemia patient. She seemed unaware of the tense atmosphere, thinking the room full of people were Ethan's subordinates. Seeing us, she paused, then showed a smug smile, walking straight in. "Ethan, why are you here?" Her gaze swept over me and the child, lips curling in mockery. "Ah, so this is that bitch and her bastard? TSK, really pathetic." Her words like a sharp knife pierced my heart, making me tremble. "Shut your mouth." Father coldly spoke, tone unquestionable. However, Vivian wasn't scared, instead intensified. "This uncle, don't be angry." She deliberately feigned innocence, using tissue to wipe non-existent dust from fingertips. "I'm just telling the truth. Look at them, mother and son, faces stained with blood, so dirty. Really don't know how Ethan endures such a woman." As her words fell, she turned attention to the child. "Why is this little thing still here?" "Ethan, didn't we agree to draw his blood to save me?" "What are you waiting for? Quickly call the doctor." Hearing this, I stiffened, incredulously looking at her hypocritical face. While Ethan stood like a statue, no response. Vivian was clearly unhappy, pulling Ethan's arm coquettishly. "Brother Ethan, what's wrong? Are you soft-hearted? Didn't you promise to make this child donate blood? Don't tell me you'd let me die?" Her tone sharp and affected, making one want to plug ears. But more infuriating was her lack of guilt, even trying to manipulate Ethan to continue harming me and the child. Facing Vivian's unreasonable tantrum, no one paid attention. She flew into rage, screaming, "Since none of you help, I'll do it myself." Saying that, she really pounced toward the child in father's arms, trying to forcibly snatch. This action thoroughly enraged father. He stood abruptly, coldly shouting, "I see you really don't want your life, daring to bully my daughter at this time." Then, he ordered accompanying mercenaries to pin Vivian to the ground. Vivian terrified, struggling, and shouting, "Ethan, save me. How can you watch them treat me like this?" However, Ethan still head down, silent. Whether truly repentant or feigning remorse under power, he stared at me and the child, lowly begging. "Sorry, Celia, I really didn't mean to harm you. I just thought you were so kind, surely wouldn't bear to see Vivian die." "Kind?" I sneered, voice ice cold. "Ethan, I'm not as stupid as you, believing this woman's one-sided words." "What do you mean?" Ethan puzzled. "I told everything I overheard that day. She isn't sick at all, just seeing you stupid, acting." At this, the room fell into brief silence. Vivian's face instantly paled, panickingly rebutting, "What nonsense. I clearly have leukemia, need transfusion to live, how can you lie to Ethan?" Father, hearing my words, squinted, a shrewd calculation flashing in eyes. Then realizing something, slowly turned, saying to a doctor aside, "You, come here." The doctor's face turned ashen, seeming to have anticipated this moment. Father asked, "Is what Celia said true? Think before answering." The doctor, looking at the room full of mafia, hesitated briefly, finally nodded, slowly speaking under gazes, "Yes. Ms. Vivian bribed me. She said she had leukemia, demanded drawing this child's blood to save her. But later I found she had no blood disease, those so-called treatment plans were all fake. Moreover," the doctor added, "the blood previously drawn from that child was all poured away by her, not used for any medical purpose." Hearing these, my heart twisted like a knife. Tommy suffered so much, nearly lost his life, unexpectedly, all was one person's self-directed play. Even knowing the truth early, I still wanted to tear Vivian and Ethan to pieces. Truth revealed, Vivian could no longer maintain calm, slumping to the ground. She hysterically screamed, "Impossible, he's lying, I clearly have serious illness. Ethan, you must believe me, Ethan." Father coldly glanced at Vivian, then turned to Ethan, "Did you hear clearly? This woman not only used you but nearly killed my grandson. How do you think this should be handled?" Ethan knelt on the ground, forehead to floor, voice hoarse, "I'm wrong, father-in-law, I was truly bewitched to believe her. I'm willing to bear all consequences, please give me one more chance, let me compensate Celia and Tommy with future days." Father ignored his repentance, decisively ordering, "Take these two away together, lock in the port warehouse. Assign special guards, ensure their safety until the matter is fully resolved." Several mercenaries acted quickly, dragging Vivian out of the ward. She screamed, cursed all the way, even threatening Father with revenge. But all this seemed so ridiculous, as everyone had seen her true face. As for Ethan, he silently followed, saying nothing along the way. His back looked especially heavy, unknown if it contained guilt toward me. After this farce ended, Father found the top doctors for me and the child. Our physical and psychological conditions improved markedly. The power of blood tied us three closely together. Tommy no longer worried daily about being grabbed for blood draw like before, and I was no longer haunted by those nightmares. Every night, we sat in the living room, listening to Father tell stories of searching for me these years. That long-lost warmth made me realize new life was quietly beginning. However, past pains hadn't fully dissipated. It was like a hidden bruise, no longer acutely painful, but always reminding me of the darkness experienced. To thoroughly bid farewell to the past, Father decided to handle permanent immigration for us. Before this decision, he asked if I had unfinished matters to handle. "I want to divorce Ethan." My voice calm, with unquestionable resolve. "Also, I want Tommy to change surname, forever forget Ethan this person." Father silent for a moment, then nodded. He understood this was a necessary step. Only by cutting all ties with the past could I truly step out of the shadows. Days later, when Father sent someone to place the divorce agreement before Ethan, he was curled on the cold ground of the port warehouse. Vivian slumped beside him, both in ragged clothes, covered in dirt, their cheeks sunken, lips cracked, eyes full of despair. These days, they endured unimaginable torment. Food scarcity made them weak, long confinement stiffened and pained joints. More terrifying was mental devastation. From initial humiliation to later psychological suggestions, each interrogation struck the soul's depths. Vivian even hallucinated once, thinking she saw her dead mother, and thinking she really killed Tommy, the child coming for her life. While Ethan constantly questioned why he fell to this state, their wretched appearance was shocking. Vivian's soft long hair knotted into clumps, her fingers bloody from repeated attempts to pry chains. Ethan's cheeks deeply sunken, stubble grown, original handsome face now grotesque. They emitted foul odor mixed with sweat. No trace of past glamour. "Let me go. Please." Vivian's first reaction seeing Father was to kneel, madly kowtow, forehead instantly bleeding. "I'm really wrong, let me go, I won't dare again." Father disgustedly kicked her away. "Shut up. How much suffering you caused Celia and Tommy. This is what you deserve. Want me to let you go easily? Dream on." Hearing his words, Vivian let out a shrill scream, completely collapsing. She hysterically scratched the ground, shouting please with all strength, but got only colder response. Meanwhile, Father turned to Ethan, pushing the thin divorce agreement before him. "Sign, from now on, you have no relation with them." Ethan raised head, gazed complexly at Father, then turned to nearby Vivian, finally lowly saying, "No, I can't sign, I still love her, love our child, I won't give him up." His tone firm, as if last resistance. Father sneered, "You think you deserve to talk love? You can't even protect family, yet delusionally want to be good husband, good father? Today Celia doesn't want to see you, I think you should have self-awareness." After speaking, several strong men rushed forward, holding Ethan's arms, pressing him hard on the table. He struggled desperately, trying to break free, but to no avail. Pen tip scratched paper, scrawled signatures forced down. "No," Ethan's tears burst, "you can't do this to me, I won't sign, even in death." His cries echoed in the empty warehouse, sounding utterly tragic. However, all this was but retribution for his past actions. "Then go die." Father folded the divorce agreement, utterly cold. And at the moment Ethan signed, he suddenly stopped. Peripheral vision caught Vivian cowering aside, fearfully looking at him. "It's all your fault." Ethan abruptly stood, pouncing at Vivian, fist smashing her abdomen hard. "If not for you, how would I become like this today?" Vivian instinctively countered, scratching his face with nails. The two entangled, mutually beating, cursing, utterly ridiculous. Father stood aside, coldly watching, lips curling in mocking smile. He appreciated the farce for a while, then slowly spoke, "Ethan, tell you good news, Vivian has serious venereal disease, highly contagious. From now on, torment each other to death in this warehouse." Ethan, stunned, gazed blankly, staring at Vivian, recalling past nights of revelry with her. Instantly, nausea surged, he abruptly retreated steps, covering mouth, dry heaving. "Impossible, I don't." Vivian screamed, denying. Father said no more, turned and left. The door boomed shut, isolating the outside world completely, leaving two pitiful people in this dark, damp space, despairingly awaiting death. Months later, with my permission, Father finally decided to release Ethan and Vivian. It was a rainy afternoon, they like two rain-soaked stray dogs, curled in the dark, damp port warehouse. Vivian's left eye completely blinded by Ethan's beating, no past radiance, her lips cracked and bleeding, still murmuring incomprehensible words. Ethan's situation no better. His once meticulously combed hair now messy like weeds, expensive suit long tattered. He alternately laughed madly, cried bitterly, no trace of the once spirited Shin family young master. Their skin covered in ulcerated scars, from long untreated, gradually worsening venereal disease. But Ethan didn't know that after release, greater pain awaited him. Father had already traded with the Shin family, supporting a distant cousin to power. The Shin family, to not offend Father, and to avoid stock crash from scandal, preserve family status in business, chose to abandon Ethan, this useless eldest son, letting him fend for himself. Without family support, Ethan became the city's most humble, dirty vagrant. In following days, Ethan and Vivian wandered like ghosts, slept under bridges, rummaged trash bins, even fought over moldy bread. Vivian's madness worsened, she often shouted at air, saying someone wanted to kill her. Ethan always knelt on ground, begging Shin family to take him back. Soon after, one winter night, Ethan and Vivian finally couldn't withstand the dropping temperatures, died in their interdependent bridge cave. Next morning, sanitation workers found their bodies. Coroner said they froze to death, death times less than an hour apart. Meanwhile, on the other side of the earth, I was walking with the child on a sunny beach. Tommy chased waves on the sand, Silver Bell laughter drifting with wind. Occasionally I'd recall that unbearable past, but soon diluted by the present beauty. Life is like that, reap what you sow.